finally arrived at Guerrero, Mexico.
I imagine that warm sun felt pretty good, too.
It certainly did. Now, the road from here, which continues down to our key city, Tomosechek, turns into a cow path which can only be traveled by four-wheel drive vehicle or pickup. So we unleash our Jeep and take off. You may wonder about the people here in Mexico. And the interesting thing is that everywhere we went, the people wanted to know one thing. Why had we come here? Why were we taking a vacation in Guerrero? Why not Mexico City or Guadalajara? They couldn't understand why we'd come to this desolate part of Mexico. And of course, we couldn't tell them we were searching for treasure. And so as we left the people of Mexico, the average people continuing their daily chores, we, in contrast, continued on a journey, a quest for silver.
Buddy, by this time had the country become more familiar to you, the same country you'd seen from the air?
It did, very definitely. And then we found out why. Here was Tomosechek, the city that we'd seen from the air, the key city on the treasure map. Now, our next object was to find someone that could direct us in the general direction of the ruin that we saw from the air. And when we arrived in Tomosechek, it looked deserted at first, and then suddenly we were swarmed by all of the kids in the town.
Well, buddy, that's amazing. Wherever you go in the world, Timbuktu or in a big city, it seems that youngsters are the common bond between men.
It certainly proved true in this case because through the children, we got to know the older people better and found out what we wanted to know. Now Ed here is amusing the kids by showing him how to take off his thumb, American style.
Well, a smile is a smile in any language, isn't it, buddy?
Very definitely. We found out that the head man around here was a Mr. Blanco. We asked him about this ruin we were looking for. He tells us he knows where it is, but he didn't know there was a treasure connected with it. He instructs us to continue on down the street until it ends, keep walking for a mile or so, and when we come to some gigantic caverns, some caves, which Villa and his men hid in from the federales, we were close to the cantina.
Buddy, if these were the caves where Villa's men hid, certainly this must have been close to a cantina, and possibly this is a very key clue to the whole story.
That's what they told us, and we were certainly excited that we had found the caves, because this was a definite clue to the location of the cantina.
I imagine it was an ominous feeling almost to be walking by the caves, and if one could turn the clock back and hear the plans that were talked about in the days of the revolution, the plans to give Mexico freedom.
After noting the location of the caves, we continued on down the road that was nearby and came to the ranch which we were looking for, owned by Mr. Gonzalez. Now, he owns all of the land around here. We told him we were searching for the cantina, a ruin. He told us he thought he knew where it was. It was on his property. So we took his road out further, crossed across country from that to another road, continued on. Hours later, the terrain got very familiar. And then finally, we arrived at the location he wanted to take us to. We compared our maps to it and found that this is the same site that we saw from the air so many days before. And close by was the ruin, perhaps the cantina.
Buddy, I imagine you were very grateful to be able to arrive at least somewhere after the many days of travel into Mexico itself. What was the first thing you did?
Well, we decided to make a deal with Mr. Gonzalez. We wanted to do a little prospecting on his property, and he said it would be okay as long as he got half of any treasure that was found. So the deal was made. We took out our detectron metal detectors and started to split up in search of any silver on the property. Now, the detectron, as you know, will pick up any metallic object, all metallic objects, tin, steel, iron, gold, or silver. And silver is what we're searching for today. The treasure map tells us that the silver was buried 15 feet in back of the cantina. And so while Tom works inside of the cantina, Ed works outside the cantina. He picks up a buzzing sound in the earphones which indicates that there's a metallic object down there. A large metallic object, perhaps a long ways down, or a small object close to the surface. Ed started in digging for the metallic object, and in doing so came across some very interesting things. Some whiskey bottles, some very interesting whiskey bottles, perhaps dating back to 1910.
Buddy, this must have been a most exciting find for you after days and days and a supreme effort to get into this wild country. Now you had some positive evidence that this had been used possibly years ago as a cantina by Pancho Villa's men.
Well, the bottles seemed to confirm the fact that this was a cantina, but there was no way of dating these bottles because the labels had worn off.
There's only one thing that disturbs me, buddy. These detectrons register off metal. How could you have possibly gotten any registration off the glass itself unless there was a metal top or something?
Well, the detectors didn't read the bottles. It read the coins that we found, some money, some centavos.
Did the centavos have a date on them?
Well, it was hard to read them, but some of them did date back to 1910. Now we had proof. We became excited. We dug and dug all over the area for many hours, but we came up with nothing.
Buddy, what's your theory? Where do you suppose the silver had gone to?
Perhaps someone else heard about it and came here and took away a fortune in silver. Or the cantina that we're searching for, where Villa's men hid out, is somewhere else in the rugged country of Chihuahua.
Buddy, do you suppose there's still that treasure cantina located someplace in the interior of Mexico?
Very definitely. The cantina is down there someplace. But where? As we pointed out in the story, the Lost Cantina is located someplace between the town of Tomosachek and the mining camp of Dolores. Where it is, we don't know. Could it be Los Cantinas, or perhaps the distillery near Dolores where they sold liquor back in 1910? Nobody knows. And the secret lies waiting for the person lucky enough to find it.
Thanks very much, buddy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet someone who really is responsible for me being here. It happens that he's my dad. You know, for many years, my pop has told me stories of Pancho Villa. It's true that he was with Pancho Villa and made newsreel pictures many, many years ago. Actually knew him, saw the Villa soldiers, the Villa men. Pop, what kind of a man was Pancho?
Well, Villa was, to the peons and to the lower classes, was the Robin Hood of his day, and to the ricos, the rich ones, he was a bandito. He had a very colorful life, and he did a lot for Mexico and independence. There's no question about that. In the revolutionary period from Madera on through to the present regime, there was a great many different attitudes taken. But Villa had the courage, the animal courage, to go out and win his battles.
You told me some interesting stories. I remember he stopped a battle for you once, did he?
Well, in those days, our cameras were limited, and we would run out of film, and he would stop a battle or an execution and let us reload in order to finish out the picture. He was vain. He loved to have his picture taken.
Pop, he had money, didn't he? He could have had loot.
Well, they had to have a great deal of money in order to carry on a revolution and buy the ammunition and get the wherewithal to fight their wars.
Well, there you are, ladies and gentlemen, a true story. Pancho Villa from my own dad who was there with him. He had loot. Now, all you've got to do is go down and find it. And if you do, I wish you lots of luck. You might share a little with us. Until we meet once again on Treasure, this is Bill Burrid saying goodbye and good hunting. Good luck, son.